John Adams suggested to his wife, "The more one reads, the more one sees we have to read." And as is the case for Halifax, Nova Scotia's JP Cormier, the more one learns about playing the guitar, the more one wants to play. And the more he plays, the more galvanized his audience becomes. We met up with this lifelong learner at Rouge River Brewing Company in Markham, Ontario, to talk family, influences, records, guitar, and getting the better of it. Franz Liszt said that inspiration is enough to give expression to the tone in singing, especially when the song is without words. Thanks for the inspiration, JP, and welcome to Yamaha 440 Sessions.
Hi, I'm JP Cormier from Halifax, Nova Scotia, Canada. I was raised around music. My brothers played. There was a huge record collection in the house, which had a bunch of Chet Atkins records in it. When I was 5, I started stealing my brother's guitar. And by the time I was 9, I was playing with adults off those records. I had memorized Chet's stuff, a dozen of his albums, Both things were happening simultaneously. My love affair with guitars and guitar players and playing. So that's sort of how it started, and I just never stopped. I joined the union when I was 13 and went on the road and never came back. It's 40 years ago this year. When I was 12, we moved back home to Nova Scotia from Ontario. I again delved into my brother's record collection and found Doc Watson. So I threw my thumb pick away for a few years, started flat picking. And that led me to all of the other instruments, really. Mandolin. My father was a fiddler, so that was natural. Somebody gave me a banjo. We had basses around the house. And by the time I was 15, I'd made my first record and went on tour in the States with that. It took me down the bluegrass rabbit hole, and that's where I ended up being. I stayed learning to pick, right? That was my main concern, was to be, I've always been like that. I want to learn from where it came from. I don't believe anything secondhand. The next logical progression for me, because my entire life has been spent learning. It still is. I still learn every time I play or see someone else play. It's been beautiful. The guys who you'd want to learn from would never sit down and show you anything. They would just make sure they did what you were trying to learn in front of you. And if you weren't keen enough to pick up on it, tough go, right? And that was the way it was. Like, strangely enough, the only guy that ever really sat down with me or stood up with me and taught me things was Bill Monroe. I would ask him and he would show me, but he wouldn't do it slowly, and he never told me I had it right. He'd always look at me after and go, "You just can't play, boy. Just can't pick. You're never gonna be able to do it. Canadians can't play bluegrass." He used to say that all the time. "That ain't no part of nothing." That's how he made me learn. That's how he made everybody learn. He never told anybody they weren't good. So they just kept trying and trying and trying to impress him, right? All of a sudden it became the only career choice I had. I don't trust my eyes. Oh, it's all ear. Realized from teaching people that it's very difficult to see what's actually happening. You'd think you see it, but it's not. You're not seeing it at all. You just might be seeing a certain shape or a certain movement, or it's intimated that it's moving or whatever. You don't actually know. So you have to trust your ear. And the biggest part of that is listening close enough when you're young to realize which string is open, which string is closed. That's the secret. All guitar players cheat. They do it chromatically, right? Or melodically, I should say. They would play a closed string against an open one, against an open, against a closed, to move around the neck. But if your tone is good enough, you can hide it. So they all sound closed, right? And that's the secret, is to learn the voice of the neck, no matter where it is. I had to do it because I only had the records. I had no choice but to try to go, okay, that's a complicated thing that Chet's doing. Where is he when he's doing that, right? And that's how you learn. You train your ear. Don't trust your eyes. Don't trust your own hands even. Trust your ears. That's where it all lies. Well, I never learned how to read music. I'm fully aware of the mathematical prowess that comes with theory, being able to build that algorithm in a solo because you know the math. But somehow that it loses something. So I never wanted to really almost taint what I do with the knowledge of how I was doing what I was doing, which means everything I play is just from the heart. Because I have no choice. I don't know what I'm doing. So
I think you do.
Well, I don't have a lot of choice. Well, it was mostly Chet. That's the same story for a million players, but it was him, and just the magic of what the guitar can do. It's the most versatile instrument that exists. It does everything. It can play melody. It can play counterpoint. It can play chord voicings. It can back up singers. You can write with it. You can compose with it. You can do all these things, and the scary part is that players now, they're still discovering what the guitar is capable of. We haven't even touched the tip of the iceberg, right? There was just something so universal about guitar. It does so many things so well. It's, for me, that never wants to stop learning, it's the only instrument, really, that can conquer you. You never beat it. You never walk into it thinking, oh, I got this. No, you don't. You don't have it. When you get that way, it'll show you different. You don't know how to do this. You think you do, but it doesn't sound right, but keep trying. And that's the beauty of the guitar. It never turns you loose. You might get frustrated, and then an hour later, right back at it, trying to do that thing that seems impossible. But it doesn't stay impossible long. Love the instrument, that's what makes it worth the struggle, which is a beautiful struggle. It's what makes great music. Ready?
Yes, sir.
Here we go. Two of them, actually. One is called This Is Chet Atkins. It was a double RCA Victor record. And the other one is called Chet Atkins Alone. And it was just him alone in the B studio at RCA. And I think, the most brilliant guitar playing that's ever been captured. And if you wanted to look at the flat picking side of things, you'd probably listen to Doc Watson live at University of New York, Syracuse in 1968 or 9. Him and Merle, just on stage with two microphones playing, and that album shaped my life. The facility that Doc had with a flat pick. It's how I learned how to do everything. And strangely enough, in the more difficult Celtic things that I do, that I'm sort of known for, playing these really difficult clogs and pick, like bow cuts with a pick and stuff. I learned that technique from Yngwie Malmsteen. I was a huge shredder fan when I was a kid. Played all that stuff on electric. And that's how I learned my right-hand speed from Yngwie, because his was perfect. The first handmade guitar I ever saw was an FG 1500 that my brother David bought in 1972. And I saw that guitar for the first time when I was 7. And I wasn't allowed to touch it, but I saw it and I watched him play it. Ever since then, that guitar sort of set the gold standard for me when it came to bench guitars. And it still does to this day. I didn't get to play it till way later in my life. When I was in my teens, he started to let me play it. And I don't know. This is sort of a roundabout way to answer this question. My YouTube channel is based in part upon my love affair with Yamaha, because even in those days, now that guitar cost $1,000 in 1972, right? If you wanted to buy a guitar like that from one of the major North American makers of that quality, Brazilian rosewood, Engelmann top, beautifully ornate, ebony everything, gold everything, you would have paid $2,000. And that's what captivated me about the Yamaha, because I knew what he paid for it. Even though in those days it was a lot of money, but still, I knew how much other guitars cost, and they weren't built as well. And I'd look at Dave's guitar and I go, man, like just look at it. All like the marquetry design around the edges and the way the rosette was, and it had a 3-piece back. It had Brazilian and maple in the middle. I would just drool looking at that guitar. And as I came up old enough and had enough money to buy a guitar, my first handmade guitar I ever bought was an LL45. And I financed it, and of course I was a kid, I was 18, 19 years old, maybe 17, and couldn't pay for it. Had to take it back. As my work ran out, it was the most heartbreaking moment of my life, take that guitar back. The Yamaha always just fit me. They have a personality. Just one of the most beautiful things to pick this up, and you realize that the guy you were talking to a week ago about his father's beach guitar, who doesn't realize how accomplished Yamaha is in acoustic guitars. You're playing this guitar and he's going, that's a Yamaha? Really, I love the look on people's faces when they realize that there's been a master-built instrument in front of them for 80 years they didn't know about, right? And that's what captivates me about them. They're so good. Even a factory-made Yamaha can compete with just about anything. And I've shown up at places where there's never a Yamaha, and I pull it out, and it eats everything in the room. And people are going, what? That's a Yamaha. Yeah, it's a Yamaha. I love the underdog. I love the underdog. I love it when something proves itself beyond the shadow of a doubt. Its quality, Yamaha does that in spades, right? And they've just never let me down. I've played them all my life, toured with them all my life, never had one break down, never had one go out, split, break, pop, nothing. They're like tanks because they're made impeccably, right? You don't have to spend $6,000 to buy a guitar that will be in your will. You can spend $4,000 and get a Yamaha, it'll be in your will. One of my favorite, the LL16D in the black. I just love this guitar. I had one for quite a while, and my friend liked it so much, he wouldn't leave me alone, and I sold it to him. And I've regretted it ever since. And I know where it is. It's in his studio. He records with it continually. is a deep question. They all have one characteristic, is the value for money. That's the first thing, right? But then that's not the most important one. The most important one is the spirit that's in the instrument. They have a personality. You get guitars that are inspirational. They move you somehow to play more and better with more bravery and inventiveness, right? You pick up a Yamaha and you do. They boggle the mind, like how well they're made and how they reach out and touch you. You play them and they shake your rib cage and they just get that thing that mojo that makes you want to play them. And that's hard to come by. There's not too many companies really in the world that do it. Like that's the kind of magic that they've always had. And I just love it. It's so consistent, right? I really appreciate Yamaha and everything that they've done for me and for all players. All kinds of yeah. This is one of my favorite Yamahas. It's an L16D black. Many of my luthier friends and I have sat and discussed at length because of this guitar, actually, and a couple others I have, that colorization of a top, whether it be sunburst or tint or tone or varnish or paint, really affects the overall tone of the instrument, and by God, it does on this one. This is just a gorgeous instrument, rosewood back and sides, and the necks on Yamahas are so good. That's another thing I love about them. They're so playable, like right to the body, and I need that for the things that I do, and it's just a beautiful instrument. Maple heel cap, maple strip down the back, it's all bound in maple. And for a fingerstyle guitar, this thing's awesome, because it's just got such a fast neck, and it's got plenty of beef and bottom for your thumb. And they look great on stage, and they sound incredible in front of microphones in the studio. And again, they're so well made that Yamahas, I don't know how they do it. They're so well made that you can take this guitar from east to west and north to south in adverse seasonal change, right? And most guitars will swell up, dry out, like they'll move all over the place. Not a Yamaha. They're living things. They're breathing all the time. But that's construction. They're meant to be played anywhere in the world. And it's invaluable when you're on the road. It's something I've always loved about them. Not to mention the sound of them. This rings on and on like a piano. It's crazy.
How many Yamahas do you have?
1, 2, 6.
Wow. Amazing.
I got 6. My oldest one, I got 7. My oldest one, this is crazy. I have a 1982. I bought this guitar. It was never purchased, ever. A guy died. He had a music store. They went in to clean out his warehouse, and they found this guitar in the cardboard box and pulled it out in the original case, hang tags, had never been touched by anyone. And I bought it I paid $1,000 for it. And it was the top of the line guitar in that year. It had the diamond fret markers, and that's my prized possession. I have that guitar in a Colton case. It hasn't been set up yet because it's never been touched. So it needs a fret dress, and that's about it. And it's going to be ready to tour. I'm going to drop a K&K in it and play it. And then I have the 50th anniversary 180, which I will never part with. I have an LSTA Dreadnought. I have an L56. I have this one. I'm going to have an APX 1200. So yeah, I have a good collection. Did you hear that last lick?